Alrighty, hey there 8th graders, and welcome to another exciting edition of Online Crash Course U.S. History. I'm your host, Mr. Johnson. Alright, we're going to get to it. Look forward to grading your Washington essays, alright, but we are moving right along for now, ladies and gentlemen. That is all we're talking about with George Washington. Now we're going to get into the presidency, the very turbulent presidency, I should add, of Mr. John Adams. But first, let's do a little review of the political parties at this time. Now keep in mind, this is a brand new thing, these political parties, okay? Oh dear, here we go. Okay, so here on the left, reminder, do your best to take notes. Notes are important. Pause the video at any time if you need to. Alright, but notes is going to help you remember this rather than just watching it. Okay, so over here we have the Republicans. Alrighty. Now, it should be noted, this is not quite the same as the Republican Party that we have today. This is a different party. These parties are going to change a lot over the years. Alright, the Republican Party, led mostly by Thomas Jefferson, who was our first Secretary of State under Washington. They believed that people should have political power. It shouldn't be about the government, it should be about the people. The government should try to stay out of people's lives. Alright, that's pretty similar to modern-day Republicans. They also favored strong state government. This was the states' rights party, alright? They said that federal government should be weaker and the states should have more power. Kind of like the Articles of Confederation, but not that little power. Okay, agriculture was a big idea for them. Jefferson wanted, his dream of the country was that everyone would just be a yeoman farmer and everyone would produce all their own stuff and not have to worry on big industry, just a nation of small little farmers, not that much industrialization. And of course, we know that they favored a strict interpretation of the Constitution. Remember, the Republicans were the ones who said, hey, Alexander Hamilton, you can't create a national bank. That's not in the Constitution. And because Republicans like Thomas Jefferson are strict constructionalists, we say you cannot do that. All right? And these people are more pro-French because Republicans really sided with the French. They were very sympathetic toward the French because of the revolution. They thought that the French Revolution, at least initially, was a good thing because they were getting rid of monarchs and they were fighting England, which they didn't like. So the Federalists like Jefferson tend to want to support France. Keep in mind, we would have lost the Revolutionary War without French help, and Republicans like Thomas Jefferson wanted to help France in their revolution. As we said, they opposed a national bank. That's the national bank that Hamilton created. And why did they oppose that? Because they were strict constructionists. And they opposed protective tariffs. A tariff was essentially a tax meant to drive up the price of foreign goods. Okay. On the other side, we have the Federalists. We've talked about these guys a lot. This party was really led by Alexander Hamilton, right? We could consider Washington a Federalist. We could consider John Adams a Federalist. Okay, these early presidents. And they kind of believed that the wealthy and that the educated should lead. Hamilton, besides being a great rapper, was also a bit of an elitist. So, kind of like Kanye West, alright? He thought he was better than everyone else. He's thinking, listen, the poor people, they shouldn't really be voting, they shouldn't be in charge. If you're wealthy and educated, that shows that you have greater intelligence, therefore you should lead. Obviously, they want a strong central government. It's in their name, Federalist, alright? They want a strong central federal government. Alright, they're really big on manufacture, shipping, and trade, big cities, big industry. They want America to be a wealthy, rich country. Alright, which is, of course, in direct contrast with what Jefferson wants over here, of a nation of local farmers just kind of doing their own thing. Obviously, Federalists have a loose interpretation of the Constitution, and you might remember, again, when Alexander Hamilton was making his national bank, he used, a loose instruction of the Constitution, alright? Because it said, hey, listen, I know the Constitution doesn't say that I can make a national bank, but it doesn't say I can't. All right, loose construction. These people, like we've talked about, were also more pro-British because they believed Britain was a great model for the U.S. They're a wealthy country. They have a lot of trade, a lot of taxes. The U.S. should be like that. After all, we came from England, so they really didn't want to change too much except for the style of government. And they favored a high protective tariffs. We're not going to talk too much about protective tariffs because they're super boring. All right, let's move right along now that we understand those political parties. Okay, so let's talk about the election of 1796. All right, as you know, George Washington decided to step down. He says, I am done after 2 terms, and it is time for a new president. Okay, this is going to set a precedent. Remember that precedent word. History doesn't go away, folks. That's why you gotta learn it. This was the first election where political parties were really a big deal. They weren't really a big deal in the first election. Yes, we would consider Washington a Federalist and Jefferson a Republican, but there wasn't like any widespread campaigning or anything. That's kind of going to change now. The 2 people running for president, they're not going to be really campaigning for themselves, but other people or surrogates are going to campaign for them, newspapers are going to get more involved, and Americans are starting to identify either as a Federalist or a Republican. You might recall from our last lesson, one of the things that Washington warned against was what? Political parties. Why? They are divisive. And from the very get-go, we see that the nation just is not listening. They have a short-term memory. All right, like when I give you folks an assignment, someone raises their hand and says, wait, what are we supposed to do? Ah, yes, short-term memory. Okay, so political parties are a big deal. I don't have a slide for this, but I could also say, you could say this election is also a precedent because it's the first time that power was peacefully passed from one person to another person. All right, Washington steps down, there is an election, and the power is successfully passed on. You could call that a precedent. Okay, so remember the Federalists? All right, we talked about them on the other slide. They want trade and industry and a strong central government. Their candidate is going to be John Adams. John Adams, that name sounds familiar. Who the heck is this guy? Who is this John Adams cat? Oh, that's right. He was the first vice president under Washington. All right? First vice president. We've been watching his HBO series. You're going to watch a video from the HBO series later. Remember, he was also the lawyer who defended the British soldiers during the Boston Massacre. All right? He was also the America's foreign diplomat in England and the first American foreign diplomat to meet the King of England when the war was over. You remember that from that video you watched when he didn't like bowing. Okay, and here, of course, is John Adams. That he is going to be the Federalist Party candidate. And, of course, what is a history lesson without memes? Ha! John Adams apple! Oh, it's so funny because the Adams apple would normally be here, and because his name is John Adams, he put him there for the Adams apple. Oh, that's funny. Oh man, good. I crack myself up. I should really quit and become a full-time comedian. Okay, moving right along. In the election of 1796, the other party was the Republican Party. All right, remember, they basically want to limit the power of federal government. Do you remember who this person led this party? That's right, it's Thomas Jefferson. And how do we know him? This is when I would ask you to turn and talk, I'd ask you to raise your hand, but you're not there, all right? So, hopefully you said that you remember Thomas Jefferson for a couple of reasons. One, he wrote the Declaration of Independence, mostly. That's a pretty big deal. Two, he was our nation's first Secretary of State under President Washington. Pretty big deal, pretty important guy. Well, who won this election? That's right, John Adams won 71 to 68. And of course, these are the electoral votes at this time. All right, as you can see, that's a pretty gosh darn close race. That's not a huge margin, which shows just how divided the nation was. Get it? This is the division symbol. Now remember, when Washington was elected president, it was unanimous. He was unanimously elected to show unity, and of course, Washington was insanely popular. He was insanely popular. He was like Kim Kardashian and Billie Eilish and Tom Hanks all rolled up into one. Everybody loved him. Okay. With Adams, not the case. Him and Jefferson were more divisive. Of course, their founding fathers and the nation was grateful, but now the war is over, the Constitution's set up, and factions are starting to come into place. Alright, so Adams becomes president, and Thomas Jefferson becomes the vice president because, as you recall, we've talked about this, at this time, whoever came in second became the VP. And we ask how this would work today. Here's Thomas Jefferson, by the way. Alright, let's give him a snide eye. Look at that. He looks mysterious. Okay. Hey, Thomas Jefferson. Why so serious? Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face. Shout out to all my Batman fans. Okay. We'll give him a curly mustache, too. Ah, yes. Look at that. That's quite nice. Alright. You know, maybe he's wearing like a Nike coat. Okay. Anyway. Maybe we've talked about how this would work today. If Hillary Clinton was the vice president under Trump, it would be a disaster. Okay, but let's move right along. Today we're going to talk about something, we're going to talk about John Adams' presidency. And I must say, we have talked about a lot in this class about how Washington arguably might have had the hardest time being president because no one was president before Washington. He was the very, very, very first. So he has to completely write the book. He has nothing to go off of, and that's hard. I'm going to amend that. Perhaps Adams had the hardest presidency because this guy had to come after George freaking Washington, hero of the Revolution. All right, everybody loved George Washington. Remember, he's Kim Kardashian, Billie Eilish, and Tom Hanks rolled up into one. And John Adams is not like that. He has big shoes to fill, and he knows it, and he has something to prove. And we've already seen from those videos how the guy can be a little hashtag awkward, alright? He would have loved social distancing. So this is going to be hard for Adams. He's being graded on a curve. And this is typical for lots of vice presidents that become presidents. They have big shoes to fill. Just look at after Franklin Delano Roosevelt died, when Truman became president. He had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Big shoes to fill. Everyone's comparing him to the guy who came before. So, good luck, Adams. Alright? Let's talk about something. We're going to talk about the XYZ Affair, which was an affair when X was married to Y, but they caught Z Okay, no, I'm just kidding. It's not that kind of affair. Why is it called the XYZ Affair? More on that later. Right now, let's just dive into the issues. That's right, folks. We're going back to issues with France. As you might recall, Washington put out the Neutrality Proclamation saying, we're not going to go to war with France, we're not going to go to war with England, keep us out of Europe's business, we are young, and we are broke. But France still kept harassing United States sailors and United States ships. They still kept impressing our sailors and raiding our goods. We signed a deal with England, known as the Jay Treaty, and we stopped. England stopped doing that to us, alright? Which is really smart of England, because that made them look better in the eyes of Americans and pushed more Americans toward wanting to go to war with France. But France kept doing this, and there's a big call still in this country, even though there's a neutrality proclamation for war with France. So, Adams wants peace with France, and he's going to send diplomats to France to end this undeclared naval war, which was really costing the United States. Okay. Now, we must keep in mind, this is an... Did I spell costing right? I don't know. Probably not. This is an undeclared naval war. These ships are fighting each other. There is no official declaration of war. It's just a bunch of uppity, rowdy sailors on the high sea who are bored, you know, just going at each other and fighting, alright? But Adams wants it to end, and the U.S. is getting really feisty for war with France yet again. But Adams, like Washington, doesn't want war with France. Adams wants to respect the Neutrality Proclamation After all, he was part of the administration that issued it. He was vice president. Okay. Now, the French, led by their foreign minister Talleyrand, that was his name, Talleyrand, great name, they demanded that whoops, it's a typo. The French, led by foraging, oh my gosh, folks, I have so many typos on this, I apologize. It's early in the morning. The French, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Oh, this is terrible, alright? This should read, the French, led by Foreign Minister Talleyrand, demand the diplomats pay $250,000 before negotiations begin, and then add a loan of $10 million on top of that to show, quote-unquote, positive intentions. So can you believe that? The American diplomats get to France, and the French are like, Bonjour, Americans! Hey, before negotiations begin, you must pay us each $22,500 million, and then you must give the nation of France a loan of 10 million of your US dollars. Sacre bleu, savez? I took French in college, can you tell? Now, this is really a bribe, and France was really exploiting us. This is not how you do diplomacy. Today, when America sends diplomats abroad, they talk to the other country. They talk to those diplomats directly. There's no pay-to-play scheme, and that's what France was doing. They're saying, hello, Americans, if you want to speak to us, you must pay us first. That is not what you do, alright? So, arguably, the result is, this is going to really upset the Federalists, and they're going to call for war with France again, and it turns out that the Federalists are going to be more willing to pay for millions in war debt than to pay a bribe to France. Why? Because pride, ladies and gentlemen, as maybe you know, or you will find out when you get older, pride's an ugly thing. Now think about it. If Adams' government just paid this money, then essentially what France was saying, they would call off their navy. They would stop harassing United States ships. France is basically saying, yo, pay the French diplomats $250,000 and give the country of France a $10 million loan, and we will stop this. That is extortion. That is bribery. However, would it stop? Absolutely. So some in the Adams administration might be like, I don't know, John Adams, maybe we should just, excuse me, maybe we should just pay these folks. I mean, yes, it kind of stinks, it's a bribe, but it would stop this problem. This is really costing us, alright? But other people were like, absolutely not. We would rather go to war with France, which of course would cost a lot more than this. That's the thing. War is one of the most expensive things that human beings can do besides going into space, right? But the Federalists, were, like I say here, were more willing to pay for millions of dollars to go to war with France than to bribe France. And yes, bribing France, while expensive, would have been a lot cheaper than war. This is what they said at the time. This was one of their slogans. Millions for defense, not 1 cent. Whoops, not 1 cent for a bribe. Okay, I'm not even going to try to spell out bribe, alright? Obviously, folks, when Mr. Johnson made this, he was very sleepy and had some typos. You will forgive him. Okay, so again, the Federalists are saying we will spend millions of dollars to defeat France in war, but we will not spend 1 cent to bribe them. Now, Adams, he's in a pickle. He is a Federalist. He's the president. That means he is the leader of the Federalists. But he does not want war. So what to do? What is John Adams going to do in this situation? He needs to keep his party happy, but he also wants to keep us out of war. He's in the exact same trouble that President Washington was in. So Adams decides to do two things. One, he decides to not pay the money, obviously. Adams is a Federalist, so he's not going to pay the money to France. But people still want war, alright? Yes, good thing for Adams for not giving in to the bribe. Although you could make the argument, if you just pay France the money, it'll stop. But then that's not good, because that will set up a precedent that the United States gives in the bribery and extortation. And they will, and basically it says to other countries, hey, this Adams guy, you can just ask him for money. All right. But so he doesn't pay the money, but people still want war. So Then what does Adams do next? He goes to Congress and he asks Congress to strengthen the Army and the Navy because they're pretty weak at this time. Remember, before this time, we did not have large standing armies and navies. We do now. So Adams asks Congress to strengthen the Army and Navy just in case France declared war on us, like officially, like an actual war, like not just the Navy, but they send over the French Foreign Legion and a bunch of troops to invade the United States. However, Adams still does not declare war. All right? He's also going to put Washington in charge of this army, which again, that's kind of a cool thing. People do love Washington. So here's Adams' idea. I don't want to go to war. I'm not going to pay the money. However, if France decides to escalate things because I don't pay the money, and if France declares an official war on us, we have to be prepared. And John Adams is absolutely right in this situation. He is president. It is up to him to make sure the nation is fully prepared to go to war if it comes to that. And if France decides to declare war on the United States and we are not ready, that is going to come back and cost John Adams. And it may even be the end of the country. So Adams is saying, we're not paying the bribe, we're not going to war, but gosh darn it, we are going to be ready for war if war comes. And if war comes, it will be France's fault, but we will be ready. All right, so that's what Adams is doing. All right, he's speaking softly but carrying a big stick, so to speak. We're going to strengthen that army. We're going to strengthen that navy, so we will be ready for a fight. And, keep in mind, then if France does decide to declare war on the United States, it will be France's fault, and the world will see that, and the world will sympathize with the United States. So he's going to strengthen the Army and Navy and put Washington in charge. Keep in mind, Washington's old, and he is retired, so he would really be in charge in name only. He would be called an armchair general, which really means a general that's really old, sitting in their armchair, kind of dictating what's going on. Hamilton would really be in charge. And of course, Hamilton did not get along well with Adams, so that's going to be a tricky situation. Now, again, this makes Adams extremely unpopular and would end up costing him. Yeah, he put Washington in charge of the army, but what do people want? War! Who do they want it with? France! When do they want it? Yesterday! They want this war right now. And this is going to end up costing Adams in the next election. However, Adams did what was right, even if it was not popular. Because not only did the things that Adams do keep us out of a war with France, a war that we were not ready for and could ill afford, it did end soon after this. In the year 1800, France and the U.S. signed a treaty which officially ends this undeclared naval war between France and the U.S., and we don't have to bribe France. So basically, in a few years, this all ends. And Adams had the foresight to understand that's exactly what was going to happen. Adams is like, listen, country, I know this stinks. We're not going to bribe France, but we're not going to go to war with them either. We're going to strengthen our military. Yes, some more of our sailors might be harassed. That's why we're strengthening our navy. But it's going to be bad for a while, but we can't go to war. Again, Adams is following Washington's lead in this situation, ladies and gentlemen. He knows we're not ready for war, and he keeps us out of it. Now, this is an unpopular decision, and it will cost Adams his second term. He is going to be the first one-term president, and this is one of the main reasons why, along with another reason we're going to talk about later. But it just goes to show, ladies and gentlemen, that sometimes in leadership, doing what is the right thing is not always the popular thing. And John Adams is going to show that. He could have just declared war on France, become insanely popular, and maybe served 2, 3, 4 terms as president. But he knew it was not the best thing for this country. And Adams is a founding father. He wants this country to be safe and protected. He just spent the past few decades trying to ensure that. Okay, here is a political cartoon of this time. Let's zoom in a little bit here. All right, so here we have the United States foreign ministers, and here is a French person Alright? And it's showing, hey, to do diplomacy with France, you have to pay. All these foreign diplomats are dropping money and gold, nice things here, into the national sack of France. It's called a diplomatic prerequisite. Essentially meaning, hey, to do diplomacy with France, the prerequisite is you gotta pay them lots of money. So this is a political cartoon again of the time, showing that, hey, listen, to do diplomacy with France, you have to pay them, and that's not good. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that was a bit of a longer video today, but we're starting a bit of a new topic, and that happens. So thank you for watching. You're going to watch these 2 other videos now. Again, don't feel like you have to write them down and slam them into YouTube. They're going to be on the email, alright, and posted on the school website. So now that you've watched this video, please watch these 2 videos. This first one is from the John Adams series. It is going to feature John Adams and his vice president, Thomas Jefferson, talking about the XYZ Affair. Alright? Oh, by the way, it was called the XYZ Affair because X, Y, and Z were the pseudonames that were given to the French diplomats who demanded the $250,000. Adams wisely thought we shouldn't out those people. We shouldn't name those French diplomats who demanded the bribe by name, because that would make things worse, so they gave them the pseudonames X, Y, and Z. There you go. So, in this video, Adams is going to be giving the news to Jefferson that, hey, Jefferson, your French pals, these French people you love so much, they're demanding we pay them. And Jefferson can hardly believe it. Alright, so Adams is going to tell him what's next. And this video is just I was looking for videos on this, and I found this video. I think it's made for kids, but I found it hilarious, and it's an opera. It's a very short opera about the XYZ Affair, and I think that's fascinating, and y'all could use some more culture in your lives. So, thanks for watching this video. Watch these next 2 videos, and then there will be a homework quiz posted on Teams. Do your best on that homework quiz. Alright, stay healthy, folks. Look forward to seeing you whenever that is going to be next. Study that history. Make sure to use this. Don't forget to also use your textbooks. I believe this section starts on page 86 or 87. You can find it in your textbooks. It's going to say the XYZ Affair, alright? And use that in these videos to answer your homework questions. I will talk to you later. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you are keeping in touch with other people and checking in on your loved ones. Mr. Johnson, out!